Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Sunday Talks within the Nine-Sided Circle. It is May 3rd, I believe, and I'm one of your hosts. I'm Noor Kyle, along with your other host.
That would be me, Mushtaq Ali.
Yes, and I'm in LA, and you are in...
I am in the Bay Area. I know this does not look like the Bay Area. Spiritually, I am in Canyonlands today, but physically, I'm in the Bay Area.
Looks great. Looks so sunny there.
Yes.
So, you want to do our little YouTube spiel real quick?
All right. So, here is our YouTube spiel. Spieling. First of all, if this is your first time watching one of these, welcome. If it's not your first time, welcome anyway. Feel free to look down there somewhere and you will see a button that says subscribe, and it would be wonderful if you did.
Yeah.
And when
you'll be able to keep up with all our videos, and you can give us feedback on the ones that you've seen. We'd really appreciate that.
And even if, if you really want to be kept up, hit the notify button. That's the secret. If you hit the notify button, then you will know every time we post a video.
Yeah.
And that's exciting.
Alternatively, you can join our mailing list or join our Facebook group, which are linked in the description.
Yes, and are we not about to come out with a newsletter?
Oh, yes, yes. I will be doing our monthly newsletters, and those will be coming out the first week of every month. So look forward to those. Obviously, this is
We're
the first
looking
week
forward
of the
to those, whichever one.
Yeah. So, yeah, I will be sending one out later this week. So there we go. So today, our topic for discussion is finding peace in a trying time. Yes.
Apropos.
I'd say so. I think that now, in a lot of regions, we're past the initial shock and awe factor of going through this pandemic. And now we're in this kind of holding pattern for some of us, and many of us are getting restless. How do we start to deal with that in a way that's going to be productive and not too self-destructive? How do we go about that? And that's why we wanted to talk about things like cultivating inner peace, for instance. And that's going to be the main idea of the discussion today. But we also want to touch on dissociating, because we're all going to be prone to that right now as a coping mechanism. And as I wrote in the description for today, we're not making a moral judgment between dissociating and finding a more, mellow, equanimous presence of self, in the moment. Both of those are going to prove useful, especially going through an experience like this. So, what are your thoughts, Mushtaq?
I think that working on finding peace, finding inner peace, especially, is maybe the most important thing we can do right now.
Yeah.
And because it's going to require making some certain interesting changes in ourselves in some cases. And this is assuming that y'all don't have complete inner peace at the moment.
Yeah,
I can say I have inner peace until one of these assholes goes screaming down my street at 60 miles an hour. Then my inner peace becomes ruffled for a minute.
Yeah, yeah. And in my day-to-day life, I've been dealing with a lot of uncertainty and unpredictability due to circumstances that are generally out of my control. So that's been my challenge to my inner peace. But yeah, it's still possible.
Yes, even probable.
Yeah.
So Ilmar, what do you think? What's your biggest challenge to inner peace? And how do you cope with that if you do?
No, I think probably my biggest challenge is simply the lack of physical contact with people. I mean, I miss embraces, I miss hugs, I miss that whole thing, and yeah, my cat doesn't quite make up for that. That helps. But,
Yeah.
how do I cope with it? I mean, I I don't know that I particularly cope with it one way or another. I mean, I still have my wife here, which helps, of course, but I think it would be tougher if I was living by myself completely.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I don't really see that I have particularly much in the way of coping mechanisms. I have time now to spend my time more meditating. I still do, a lot of Zoom online type stuff with people, and I practice swinging a stick around because of the stuff that you excited me here to do. But
Yeah.
I'm doing my qigong, but so it's kind of a quiet time. But I definitely miss the human contact. The just physical human contact.
Right.
That seems very hard to replace right now.
Definitely. Yeah.
That I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, I've been experiencing that as well, and I know that Mishtak has too. So it's part of the predicament, shall we say, to be cut off from one another in a physical distancing way has meant that the comfort we get from physical contact with other living beings and human beings in particular, we are not able to use that as a resource necessarily to keep ourselves afloat.
And I've been actually somewhat surprised about to how much that my value of that, which I took kind of for granted when I was able to go tango a couple nights a week or stuff like that, or embrace people that I know. And but I'm realizing that I do miss that quite a lot, and I'm not exactly sure what value that provides, but it clearly does provide some value because it's something that I miss,
Yeah. And given that, you were doing dance and all that stuff, which involves a lot of physical contact in your style, I mean, the void is real.
That is very, very real, I mean, I can I have some people whom I know who just kind of enjoy being completely by themselves, and are using this time to do whatever. But I guess I'm not one of those people. I mean, I find I do need, not so much need, but really value, close physical contact with people. And
Yeah.
which is kind of curious. I mean, because in some sense, philosophically, we're all one and all that shit, and we maybe don't need that kind of stuff, but I find I do value it,
Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Definitely.
Nancy, welcome, by the way. I was worried you weren't going to show up today.
Yeah. Well, I was a little late, but it sounds like I missed all the advertisements and got here for the beginning. So.
Oh, you missed
you're
it. You
good.
missed, actually, we revealed a couple of the secrets of the universe before the
I'm
advertisement.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Just remember, anytime you're late, we have told people incredibly cool stuff before you got here. It's always what happens.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But what is it that you find torques your wah, and how do you cope with that to bring peace into your life?
Well, I'm inclined to think I deal with it by dissociating. That I am not as worried as I rationally should be. I You know, my present job may just be to wake up enough to be present in the situation. I don't know. I mean, you know, I was feeling like I was on the edge of tears, or I just been crying for hours, although I hadn't been. Then I did some qigong and I feel better, and things are likely to get a lot worse, but I'm not connecting to that. I just kind of worry.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because we wanted to talk about dissociation. There's a lot of negative opinions about that, but as far as Noor and I are concerned, dissociation is a valid tactic.
Yeah.
In cases like this, there is no moral imperative to not dissociate from pain if you're experiencing it, or not dissociate from stress. It's one of several tactics that you can use. It's not the one that I advocate in most cases, but at the same time, I think it's completely valid to do that.
Yeah, so I am polite, I am entertaining, I am socially useful.
Mm-hmm. It could be a lot worse than that.
Indeed.
Well, I'm glad you made it tonight, Nancy.
I'm glad I'm here. It's great to see everybody.
Yay, likewise. So, thank you for sharing, Nancy.
And Zainab, tell us about your voyage to inner peace and the rocky outcrops that get in the way of your canoe.
A nice way to say that.
I agree.
Yeah, as you mentioned, there's a lot of distractions coming, but as also there's less distraction in another way, so there's less things happening. I find self-remembering a good tool at this time, as there's less of communication with people, so I get to remember that every time. Also cultivating things that I always wanted to do, and staying on a task for enough to get that energy going.
That's great. I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear that. Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Zainab. Is there anything that you have found challenging? I mean, if things are going well, that's great. I don't want to like dig into the nitty-gritty unpleasant stuff, but I'm just curious to know if you feel like sharing. There's space for that too.
Definitely, I feel more stuff coming up, especially from maybe it's the past, the experiences of the past, revisiting them and becoming peace with them, making peace with them, or changing the story sometimes.
Yeah.
Specifically, I feel staying on a task for me is a challenging thing, and being at a level to really dig into something. So I've been trying to focus on that, disregarding all the things coming up.
Yeah.
I mean, that day I was...
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah.
But it works, actually. The other day I was actually emotionally sad and with tears, but I managed to do all the weightlifting session, disregarding what it was coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. It sounds like you have a balance. You know, you have like different types of things going on, and you're handling them in ways that are specific to each layer of that experience. And that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Thanks, Zainab.
And what about you,
About me.
Lady Noor?
What about Cherie? Can't we put her on the spot
You can
first?
put her on the spot, but I'm always putting Cherie on the spot.
All right. So for myself, you know, I've been coping with my roommate having her, you know, she has her own schedule, her own obligations and stuff. And that's meant that sometimes we're together, sometimes we're not. And throughout most of this quarantine experience, I've been doing a lot of stuff independently, which has been interesting because we tend to be pretty interdependent friends. And I've had to sort of acclimate to being less interdependent and more independent for the past, I'd say, month and a half. And I think that's important. I value that, definitely. But it has meant that, you know, the stress of everything being turned upside down as it was tough. Then, you know, reformulating how I do things today, that was an extra seasoning of stressor, shall we say. And the way I've been dealing with it is definitely a mix of accepting what I cannot change, and as the saying goes, recognizing the things I can change and working on those. And of course, as we've been saying, dissociating. Like, I and Netflix we're pretty good friends. And I'm glad it's there. I'm glad I have that friend to count on. So those are two ways that I'm addressing the challenges that have been put on my path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
what about you, Mushtaq?
I was about to say for me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a real touchy-feely person, so that doesn't bother me as much as it might somebody else. There are a couple of people who I let into my physical sphere, and it would be nice if they were close enough to cop a hug and that sort of thing. There's nothing like warm snuggles and watching TVs, but we can't do that right now. I have one frustration, which is Nora is having to do a whole bunch of stuff down there. And usually, if that were the case, I would hop down there and help her lift heavy shit and such while that needs to be done. And
Yeah.
can't do that right now.
Yeah, because we're looking out for your well-being.
Yeah, because I am old and feeble, and that there Mr. Coronavirus is just hanging out in a dark alley somewhere, wants to leap out and get on me.
I don't know about the feeble part, but yeah, I mean, still a worthy opponent. And
yeah, it's not something that I would want to catch because I'm in the high risk group. You know,
Yeah.
I am well past 60. And supposedly have a pre-existing condition that lends itself to the coronavirus eating you alive and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we do our best, but the thing that I find that niggles at me is my favorite thing to do. My way of entertaining myself is that I will go someplace. Like I might go to one of the towns here on the peninsula, like go down to or go up to Menlo Park and wander around there because it's very historic. You got the Menlo Park VA hospital, which is where Ken Kesey first experienced LSD and where he stole his supply from. I like to wave at that every time I go by there. Or I'll go up to San Francisco and spend the day wandering through my favorite parts of the city and find a nice restaurant and have a dinner and then come home well satisfied, or go to Berkeley and haunt the bookstores. I miss haunting bookstores.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I have to cope with all of that stuff. And there are tricks that I used. The main one, and you've heard me say this before, it's something I stole from Adyashanti. I filed the serial numbers off, gave it a new paint job, and claiming it as mine, even though it was actually his. And that is, allow everything to be as it already is. That is the first step to inner peace. If you can allow everything to be as it already is and not resist what is, then you are halfway there.
Yep.
Now we can pick on Shuri.
All right, Shuri. You there? You ready to get picked on? She might not be.
Hi.
Hi.
She's already. Are you doing your stretches?
I was hoping you. I was thinking, what do I say? What do I say? Because I'm not bothered by a lot of things easily. Like, I might get annoyed and things like that, but trying to hook into the wonder of things, because I'm in the middle of a move. So, I'm going through all my stuff and moving from one place to another, and you see things that you haven't seen for ages and you haven't missed it. And you just realize that you're not defined by these things, but they're so lovely. My house is full of treasures and they've got wonderful memories and things. And that makes me happy and peaceful. And most of the time I can see the wonder of doing a particular movement, or how good it feels to be in my body, to have hot water to wash my hair.
One of my favorite things, yeah.
Going to the shop and finding a particular food that I enjoy and making it nice dinner. They're just simple things. The things that annoy me are probably that when this ends, I wish there was more time, because there's so many enjoyable things. So people themselves haven't really bothered me. What maybe bothers me about people is if they've got so much opportunity to discover things and they're not taking it, they're not recognizing that, they're not practicing being kind or whatever. It's like, come on, get out of your own way. This is what I like to practice. Like, what am I in the way of something? What am I trying to block? So just let it unfold and see what happens. And it's really interesting to have been given a practice by a beloved teacher. I said, I don't have a choice. Because of course you have a choice. You just don't like the choices you've got. And then he said, if you make a choice, that will actually unfold something for you to then see what is a better choice. What is the next better choice? Doesn't matter if it's wrong. It just told you that was a wrong choice. And now you go and do that. I went, oh, okay. So, I've always found that as a great thing to think, okay, don't do that. Don't feel like that. Do this, change that. If I get attached to something, that's where my suffering will develop. So stop it. Stop being attached to that. I like things being clean, neat, and tidy. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So just go and clean it up. If it matters to me, I'll clean it up. If it matters to me, I will go and rectify whatever that is. If it's highlighting something to me that I need to practice more kindness to someone, or more empathy, or more understanding, just understanding, where is that person coming from? How can I just allow them to be as they are and let them discover what they need to do next? Don't interfere. It's like just saying, is that so? Is that so? people making big declarative statements. I'm thinking, is that so? Okay. And not making strong suggestions about anything. I feel okay. It's almost like, am I being boastful about being having an equanimity? But I feel all right.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you do.
To be so grateful. Yeah.
I think it definitely helps to have a sense of, like you said, wonder about not only, you know, like you have things happening for you, like this move that is something you must attend to right now. And because you're able to be present in that experience and to handle that and kind of savor the experience of it, I think that is noteworthy. Because I've noticed when I've had something that I feel immersed in, it's allowed me to kind of use that as a I don't know how to put it, but it's like an uplifting factor, you know, when everything's kind of the same every day, or everything's feeling kind of uncertain and uncomfortable every day. That's challenging. But if I can get into a place where I'm honing in on something important to me, I feel nourished by that.
Yeah. Everything that's happening at the moment is the big elephant that we're trying to eat, but you can only do one bite at a time. So instead of thinking I've got to get through a lot of bites, I just go, wow, that bite was awesome. You know, I put the bins out. I put the recycling bin out with as many things as I could recycle as possible, and it felt really good. I noticed that the weeds were coming, so picking all the big weeds that had flowers on it, so I knew that those seeds would never ever get to germinate in my garden. Reorganizing a different space in a way that I hadn't thought of, and it's like they're puzzles of how do I put this many clothes in this little space or this bigger space, and just juggling things around and just doing something left of field. There's a way, that's part of the digestion of life. You know, you just see, oh, there's a little problem. It's a little problem, really. It's just a little problem. And you just think, okay, approach it one bite at a time, one little bit at a time. And you get these tiny wins. And these tiny wins make you feel so good. You think, oh, that's done. That's fixed. Whatever. But then you turn around and you look and the elephant is still there. But you just laugh. And you just think, oh, well, today I did this. Tomorrow I can try this. We'll just see what happens.
Right. Well, thanks, Sheree. Good.
So, what can you do to develop inner peace? That thing that is everybody wants to have. What is inner peace? First of all, who can give me a definition of inner peace? Anybody? Bueller?
Yeah, Zainab, what are you thinking?
Being here. Just being.
That's actually probably the best definition you could come up with, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the difference between dissociating and having actual inner peace. Dissociating, you aren't here. This is, again, to remind you, there is no moral judgment on using dissociation in times like this. We advocate for inner peace instead of dissociation in most cases, but that's just us. You don't have to listen to us. What the hell do we know? But being here, being in your body, and allowing everything to be as it is, and choosing to be where you are. You know, I get up every morning and I go through a practice of saying, I am choosing to isolate myself today. This is my choice. This is not the government telling me to do anything. This is not me being afraid. I am choosing to isolate myself from the rest of the world at this point because I think that it's the safest thing for me to do. And I don't want to tempt the gods to go, oh, he's too proud. Boink.
Yeah.
So that's part of my daily practice, is to get up every morning and choose what I already have. And that gives me a pretty strong sense of inner peace. And once I've chosen that, then I will sit there and do my breath practice and focus on that choice and just breathe with it. Keep my eyes open, be in the room, be in my body, make my choice. By the time I'm done with that, I'm feeling pretty peaceful. Then some asshole goes screaming down the street, squealing his tires, and I have a moment of not so peaceful. Thoughts of caltrops. I've been thinking caltrops a lot lately. What can you do?
So for people who don't know what those are.
They're little things you throw on the ground. They're like 4 things that come out, and however they land, there's 1 point up, and all the points are sharp. They used to use them against horses. They work really good against tires.
Yeah, preferably against tires, not horses.
Yeah, we like the horses. You cannot burn rubber on a horse.
Nope.
No. But that's usually transitory. You know, I will allow myself to feel my irritation as these people go screaming by, and then I'll breathe.
Yeah.
And it's better, and I let go of it. And I've tried to choose to have them do this, but there's no part of me that chooses to have them do this. So I have to use a different tactic.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and that's a good point, because there's some things we really just don't have a choice to choose. It's just there. It's just aggravating and jarring or whatever, but
I can at least choose my response, and therefore
exactly.
I have
Yes.
not sent up burning barricades. I've not scattered the caltrops across the road. I've not dug giant Burmese tiger traps with sharpened chunks of telephone pole just waiting for the cars to fall in. I have thought of all of these things.
Borrow a gun from some Second Amendment person?
I don't need to borrow a gun.
Oh, you've already got one.
I will neither confirm nor deny this.
Okay.
Oh yeah, but I mean, we all have those lists of things that we, So how do you discern? I think this is a good question. How do you discern between those things that you have the wherewithal to choose versus, just accepting that cars screeching down the street is going to be a thing?
That's a really good question. So I can choose the stuff that is in alignment with my being. So choosing to isolate myself is in alignment with my being. Choosing for somebody to be a dangerous asshole on the street is not so much in alignment with my inner being. So in those cases, I have to let go instead of choosing.
So for someone, first of all, do you think it's possible for someone to feel like isolating is not in line with their inner being?
Probably. If you got somebody who is an absolute extrovert and cannot deal at all with being alone and needs that feedback from other people, then they have to let go instead of choosing. They have to let go of the emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is important to distinguish, because people may be hearing, oh, I really don't feel okay with this. I don't think I can choose this, so I feel stuck now. But if we bring in that piece that sometimes you do have to surrender to a thing that's happening that you really don't.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, there is no part of me that wants some idiot screaming down my street here with kids on it and, you know, teenagers riding bicycles and all of this and, you know, running the possibility of killing somebody.
Mhm.
I wouldn't feel bad if they killed themselves, but if they killed somebody else, I would feel really bad about that. So with that, you have to literally, for me, it's letting it go to the divine presence. The Prophet Muhammad said, when you see a wrong, reach out with your hand and stop it. If you cannot stop it with your hand, then use your words to stop it. If you cannot stop it with your words, at least petition the divine to stop it. So sometimes I end up at, you know, option 3.
Yeah.
I've seen people talk about thanking God for giving them this challenge. I'm not sure if this is reasonable or just annoying.
I find it annoying myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Nancy?
Yeah.
Do
I
you
don't
find
even
it?
try.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'm still. I've calmed down at the moment, but I have felt safer resenting the situation than trying to do anything about my resentment.
Mm.
Yeah. My only consideration on that is resentment is hard on you.
Mhm.
And so feeling the resentment, if that's what you feel, is good. Letting it go right after is even better.
Okay.
I mean, Noor will tell you, you know, I am not constantly peaceful.
Nope.
But if I get angry or upset, it's like a flash. It's like, grah, and then, oh, okay. And it's done. Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, it feels so important to acknowledge that there's a part A and a part B to these little incidents of emotion. Like, you have to acknowledge it, otherwise you're just stifling your spirit in a sense. But that doesn't mean you have to hold on to it and torture yourself with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sharia's showing off how flexible she is. My legs hurt just watching her sit like that.
I'm not moving.
She's just chilling.
Just chilling.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just chilling.
So basically, that's what we have today, is the idea of the way you achieve inner peace is first choose to be in the situation that you are in as much as possible. If you cannot bring yourself to choose to be in this situation, then choose to experience the frustration or whatever you're experiencing and let it go. And do your practices.
Yeah, because those take the, you know, when you're letting it go, that's not always an easy thing to do. So things like breath practice take out the somatic charge that can be rolled up in having feelings about something that's happening. And that can be tension in the body, it can be like, you know, shallow breathing, tension headaches, all that stuff can be relieved by allowing yourself to just have like a very simple breath practice, like the one that we're always talking about. Do some gentle stretching, getting up and walking around the house, having a glass of water, all those things.
Playing incredibly loud rock and roll music.
Yeah, taking a nap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had that thing when I was living in Oakland. The next door neighbor got his kid a drum set, a trap set. And the kid would open his window, which happened to be right by mine, just across the way, and he would practice. And he was very, very, very bad. And after a couple of weeks of this, him just doing it at random times,
With his window open.
his window open,
Yeah.
I took my computer speakers and pointed them out my window and chose very, very loud rock and roll that was a beat that was not what he was practicing. And I played it out the window at full volume. And just by doing that, I could go, and a few seconds after I start, you can hear screech clunk with his window coming down. I only had to do that a few times, and he got the message, and he would not practice at random times when people are like having dinner and stuff. And I never had to yell at him. And I got to listen to some really good rock and roll, really, really loud.
So sassy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jefferson Airplane.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Canned heat.
So yeah, I mean, sometimes dealing with your frustration doesn't necessarily mean sitting there with your hands pressed together, chanting Om, you know?
Yeah, you do that after.
Yeah. Fair enough.
An interesting observation that I had.
Yes.
I had an observation over the 6 weeks. The first reaction was a profound fear of not meeting my obligations and lack of income and all those sort of things. And now that we've finished 6 weeks here in Sydney, Australia, it's like, okay, so we do another week, or we do another week and another week and another week. Everybody goes, oh, okay. And how that has tempered over time. And we have to give ourselves time, that the initial power of an experience that is anger, resentment, fear, being pissed off, it doesn't last. It fades, it wanes, it changes shape. So if we can just remember that that saying, this too shall pass, but there's a tempering and a moderating, and you get used to things, and you make a decision to do something else and something else and something else, because you just can't sit and wait for the cooked chicken to fly in your mouth. So what are you going to do? So I was reflecting on that today, thinking 6 weeks ago, I felt really almost overwhelmed with what was happening because we were so underprepared. But now we're all prepared. We've all got plenty of everything. We've all got access to things. We've got access to help in some form or another. And sometimes it comes in unexpected shapes. And you don't realize that that's a help until later when you can reflect on that. And I think that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said about that. I think all of us, as far as I know, have pulled through this okay in terms of resources and, you know, the most foundational support. And I'm so glad about that. I am, however, also conscious that as far as I know in the US, I really can't speak about elsewhere, that isn't the case for everyone. And that's important to consider. And this is where our practices have to come into play for everyone, because these are things that are almost, you know, if they're not life and death per se in terms of the amount of weight they carry, they're barely above that for some people. And I don't want us to forget to have that perspective, because that's going to leave people out of the loop. It's going to leave them out of this sphere of care that we need to make sure that we're holding up. That said, for those of us who do have a sense of foundational security, yeah, we absolutely need to recognize that and value that and take comfort in it, because it will allow us to be a better support for those around us as well.
I think your key word there was foundation, where those of us who have, more is going to be expected of us to respond versus reacting. So when you see the need, you actually go and do something about it. You don't wait to be told, go and help that person.
I think that's important to consider. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, the foundation of our work makes us a bit more whole, a bit more resilient, and a bit more understanding in the fact that, okay, all right, what options have we got? Let's explore those and help people that way. And that actually helps us because we're not focusing on our own lack, so that we can actually look at someone else and we're all responding. I like the word responding. And what was the
generative?
Yes.
Generative. That's it. We were talking about being generative versus just remediating. So that is such a powerful thing. And I'm thinking, what can I do to be generative towards what comes next? Our practices give us foundation. So that's a really good thing.
Yep.
I think one thing that's been important for me is to recognize, you know, we tend to distinguish between what we call remedial and generative work. And I think most of what we do here is generative work, but I definitely have a lot of people in my social circles who are what we consider to be still in like their remedial phase of working on their own challenges and stuff. But in a time like this in particular, it's felt important for me to make sure to be compassionate with where they're at. Because things are hard enough for us all. And so if they're not in a place where they can think about, you know, the big picture and enjoying the little things and stuff, I mean, of course I want that for them. But, you know, they need to, as you were saying earlier, they have their own path to walk, and just holding space for that experience of theirs has felt critical, you know, because it should not be a shame to be in a place of stuckness, if that makes sense. It's just something. Mushtak, help me out. Where am I going with this?
You're saying that we don't need to make moral value judgments on people who are at any particular level of being able to deal with this.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to ramble too much. I know sometimes I end up out in the weeds. I'm trying to spare you.
They're nice.
Well, I mean, Nora, I think you're talking about respect for what is true, and part of what is true is people are at different stages. You can imagine them doing something else, but that doesn't have authority.
No, it doesn't. And it's important for all of us to go through those steps. This cannot be forced. You know, we cannot yank people into a different way of being without their consent. But, I mean, we can, you know, we're all growing, right? None of us are perfect here. So there's something important to be said about that. But we can lead by example so that people can see that and hopefully find a sense of shared security in that. As Cherie was saying, like, it's kind of like we're all laying the foundations together.
Yep. So that's what we have for tonight. An easy talk, not too hard. You know, something to get us thinking a little bit and to listen to each other, because that's the other thing that's really good at times like this, is to listen to each other. And that's why we started out with getting the rest of you talking.
I like doing that. That's fun.
Yeah, I do too. So that's what we got.
Yeah. Any last thoughts? Elmar, what are you thinking about?
I'm probably a little bit out of it tonight. I think one of my ways of coping was to have a tall glass of white wine late this afternoon out in the backyard. I think it's showing. So
Actually,
I'm
yeah.
feeling well relaxed, but not particularly. Yeah, Mustafa, I guess, wants me to come and charge in with some objection, but I don't have anything to object to. So.
All good. No
I
worries.
enjoy it when you do, but you don't.
We are
I do
actually.
too. You know, it's kind of fun to have these
Yeah.
little debates, but not after a tall glass of white wine and a nice yard sit and all that.
Well,
Remember, if you're going to bring white wine to class, bring enough to share with everybody.
Actually, I did those in before class. You know, so.
he was pre-gaming. That's what's going on there. All right. Great. Well, it's been really nice to spend time with all you guys.
Yep, it really has. And we will be back, God willing, next Sunday at the regular time. And until then, do check out our Huddle in Place videos. We're making one a day, and we will do this until either the pandemic has mellowed out and we are no longer needing to huddle in place, or when we reach 60 days, whichever comes first.
60 episodes, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
60 episodes.
So that's the goal that we've set. And we're sticking to it.
Yep. And some of them are quite fun.
Yeah. I really enjoyed making a lot of them. And some of them are just like, oh, you know, checking in. And others are, you know, we dug pretty deep. And I feel like it was good exercise.
Yeah. The one that is coming up on Monday, which we actually recorded yesterday, is Cherie's fault, by the way.
Your fault, Cherie.
I especially recommend going back to listening to, or because I must say I have not listened to most of them. You know, so.
I mean,
go listen to the ones that have interesting titles.
Yeah, I mean, just peruse. I'll post a link if you want to the playlist, and don't feel obligated, but I think it could be fun to just explore.
Yeah, some of them are pretty good.
If I may say so, yeah. I think at some point I might do a retrospective of a sort and, you know, just reflect on some of the cool stuff we ended up doing.
Yeah.
Probably when we're through with the project. Yeah.
And we might at some point invite other people to join us. You never know.
Yeah, that's
Since
true.
you're planning on doing a newsletter anyway, why not list in the newsletter the ones that you and the ones that Mushtaq especially enjoy doing?
Actually, that's been a thought of mine. So thank you for seconding that. I will definitely consider that. Yeah. Cool.
Ready.
Thanks.
Sounds good.
All right.
Nice.
Hasta la vista.
Hasta la vista.
Have a good afternoon or evening.
Yeah.
Or morning.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
Aw, Mustaqim didn't get to come back. That's
No, he
unfortunate.
came back and then had to leave again.
Poor guy. All right.